and welcome to this episode of the Zoom Room Sessions as part of our Thrive and Thrive project. I'm David Francis Moore and this is my colleague
Juliet Harvey.
And today we are joined by Jennifer Jennings and Phillip McMahon from This Is Pop Baby. This Is Pop Baby is one of Ireland's leading production companies. Thanks for joining us today on the Zoom Room Sessions.
Pleasure, thanks for having us. Personally, there's a lot of strings to my bow, and I think that's kind of been part of what's kind of kept me going and what's been really exciting for me. And I guess I identify mostly as a playwright, but I also direct plays and I produce plays. And within This Is Pop Baby, Jennifer and I are co-directors, and we commission plays and we curate stages at festivals and within nightclubs. And so the kind of range of activity is quite diverse. But you know, on the passport form, I write playwright.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yeah, and likewise, I come from more of a producerial point of view, and I've also done a lot of programming for festivals, for music festivals and for arts festivals. And in recent years, I've started directing as well. Well, I was just listening to a playlist on BBC Six about Glastonbury Festival, which of course isn't happening this year. And Glastonbury has been a massive inspiration for me personally, because, you know, long before anybody else was doing it, it was this really extraordinarily fertile ground where high art and popular culture and all sorts of different subcultures kind of collided beautifully, which I think was picked up in its own unique way by Electric Picnic for the first time in Ireland in about 2003, 2004. And that kind of cultural space and that creative space has been kind of a preoccupation of mine from college onwards, and has really informed nearly everything that I do.
Brilliant.
And for me, I'm kind of forever kind of concerned with ideas around identity, and often that kind of plays out around personal identity or a sense of home. And I think that, like, a lot of my work and the things that I'm interested in work through kind of a queer space, and I think that can always be attributed to kind of like trying to discover a sense of place or a sense of home. And so a lot of the work that we've done in This Is Pop Baby has been queer and non-queer, but has within the company is a lot of times has concerned itself with place, and often with Dublin as a city. And as we kind of, and so we've got a festival within kind of the This Is Pop Baby range of work called Where We Live, which is kind of hyper obsessed with a kind of sense of place. And it also is a kind of it asks the audiences and the artists to kind of imagine a shared future together. And so I think that I've kind of really enjoyed being an outsider in my life, and so the work has kind of been concerned with what that dynamic is between like the inside and the outside, queer and non-queer, and so kind of and I guess that all kind of trails back to identity. So they're the kind of things that kind of stimulate thought. Maybe that doesn't, you know, and ergo motivate work potentially.
And then just to add to that, Philly and I both come really from the perspective of the dance floor, and nearly everything we do can be threaded back to the dance floor in a literal way, but also often in a broader way in terms of a kind of humanist perspective. You know, we've become more and more, you know, front-footed about how passionate we are about equality, how passionate we are about a sense of fair play, how passionate we are about representation.
Well, I guess that we always work in theatrical spaces in some way. And so a lot of the work that we've done has lived at Project Art Centre in both of the spaces there. And I suppose that we've always been interested in how you create a kind of an amazing experience in a black box. And, you know, something that we kind of would speak about together is about like the energy that we feel at the Pyramid stage at Glastonbury or the Beyonce concert in the O2 Arena. Is how do you, it's not about getting people like screaming their heads off, but how do you offer people something that has the excitement, the anticipation, the post-event catharsis, the chatting on the Lewis on the way home? You know, how do you provide how do you make theatre rock and roll, you know? And that can be with a small show, that can be with a one-person show, or it can be with a kind of a Riot style show. So we've been really interested in kind of that Rubik's Cube of cracking a black box space. But we have worked in, you know, warehouses, and you know, we put Riot on in Canadian Opera in Toronto, and we've worked in Stradbally in the Fields, putting on nightclubs, and we have worked in nightclubs, and we've brought nightclubs into the foyer of the Abbey Theatre. So there's kind of been space, and architecture itself has been really important to the work. But I guess we always kind of had this idea that if we could show you an amazing time at 3 a.m. at a music festival, when, you know, you're half put, then you will trust us when you come into the black box. And so it was about kind of dissolving the walls of those spaces, if that makes sense. And, you know, I think when we started making work, we the perceived barriers were there to us. We weren't invited to the kind of establishment party, and so we kind of thought we'd make our own party. And so we wanted to kind of generate a new audience for theatre, and we had, you know, friends who were doing all sorts of cultural activity, but they weren't going to theatre. And so we wanted to kind of surreptitiously bring them into these black box spaces via these kind of electric experiences at kind of music festivals and nightclubs and all that kind of stuff. So a range of spaces is the short answer, and you got the long answer just before that. About those types of work and how they kind of move between spaces or whatever. And it's about not allowing spaces to become too sacred, because it's, you know, because the drag queen belongs in the theater and the DJ belongs in the theater, and the, you know, so it's just about kind of, and therefore all the audiences that love those people and those things belong in the theater as well. And, you know, it's so that's something that it's been natural to us, you know. When we reflect on things, we kind of go, oh yeah, we did that, but actually we were just doing what felt right at the time. And I think that's kind of been one of the successes, is kind of blurring the lines between the theater, the club, the, you know, the festival, all of those things.
Yeah, so I think that Philly and I are entrepreneurial by nature and by spirit, and we, you know, see opportunities in lots of places that other people maybe definitely didn't used to see opportunities. And also we're massive chancers. Like, we will constantly ask everybody and anybody, can we do this? Can we do that? I mean, there's quite a funny anecdote about us approaching Fiach McAneil, you know, really half cut at a theatre forum, I think in like 2009, 2010, and essentially persuading him to let us run a nightclub in the Peacock Theatre. So, and then he came up to us when we were like feeling a little sore and sorry for ourselves at breakfast the next day. And he said, you've got it, you've got the keys, let's go. So I think there's always a sense of, really not having any reservations about asking, or following that conversation through, or making those connections. And a big part of that, I think, has been the programming aspect of the company, because while the core program for the company is the work that Philly and or I are lead creatives on, actually we have done so much programming, and we've got so much we've done so much development of other artists over the years, whether it's via Electric Picnic or our club, and in the most detailed way with the Where We Live program. And so so that has opened up a whole range of other opportunities as well.
And to jump on to the answer about collaboration, is that collaboration has been everything in the company. And I think that, the kind of family tree starts with Jenny and I, and we work very closely as co-directors. But then, very quickly expands to our core group of associate artists. They include people like the designer Niall Sweeney, like composer Al McKelleher. And then the family of artists from there, the chart goes out, and there's a lot of people that we've kind of collected over the years. And so a number of our shows, Riot being the one that kind of jumps to mind, was kind of a product of doing clubs like our club Work, and getting people to come and do spots, a 10-minute spot, a 5-minute spot, or whatever. And then just collecting this family of amazing people over 10 years and going, God, we have to make a show out of this. We've got to, and we were kind of, with Riot specifically, we were seeing this kind of variety, kind of extravaganza in cities all over the world, but we weren't seeing it in Ireland at all. And so we kind of wanted to fill that space. And so, I think all of the projects that we do are deeply collaborative. We work a lot with music. And so with people like Al McKelleher or Ray Scannell, we've worked in kind of deep collaboration. So that's something that comes very natural to us at this point. But I think it's also at the kind of the foundation of what makes the company tick and special. Jenny, would you have anything to add to that?
No, absolutely. We're really deeply collaborative organization, and collaboration can be more difficult. It takes a lot more time, it takes a lot more energy, to for everybody to move along in the same way, but the outcomes that you get are different to the outcomes that you get when you're leading a project yourself, and it's those outcomes and that process that are certainly at the absolute heart of the company.
And I think there's one collaboration that's really worth mentioning a bit more, and that's the collaboration with Niall Sweeney, who's a graphic artist, visual artist. He's, we call him our art director, but that's probably not exactly how it rolls. But Niall has designed all of our work, and he's even moved into the kind of set design of Riot and various things. But Niall has kind of led us visually, and he's led us in really interesting ways, and he's guided and he's pushed us and he's challenged us. And that has kind of informed a lot of what we've done. And so it's kind of really interesting that we are, for want of a better term, at the head of the organization. But actually a lot of our kind of visual cues, our taste level, is guided by Niall Sweeney, who's a visual artist. And so that's kind of a really interesting dynamic, and has certainly made what we do much better. Knowing to put a team together, and certainly on a project, acknowledging that, knowing what your set of skills are, and then finding the best people to do the other skills, and and not thinking that you're going to do it all. So I think that's kind of just key to any project. Get amazing people to work with you.
Your tribe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
it's been massively useful for us. It's been a kind of defining feature, I would say, of the organization, whether we're explicit about it or not, because I would define entrepreneurship as seeing opportunities and making connections, and they can be creative connections and they can be money making connections, and we're kind of interested in both. And then the other side of entrepreneurship is actually people wanting to be associated with whatever you're doing. So it's not just kind of coming from you, seeing the opportunities. There also has to be some kind of magnetism about what you're doing. And Philly and I have been just lucky enough to generate that, and for it to, we never had a strategy. We just followed the rabbit hole of things that we thought were important to us, things that we thought were missing, and things that were fun. And in following that rabbit hole, the This Is Pop Baby family, the This Is Pop Baby machine, the idea of This Is Pop Baby just gathered more and more power, really. And so now we're in this like really amazing position where people will follow us anywhere. Like if we put a show on sale, people will buy tickets, and it doesn't really matter where the show is or what the show's called. It's going to have a great image because we work with Niall Sweeney. But people will buy tickets, and that's very, very satisfying.
But being entrepreneurial is being creative, right? Because I think that like theater ultimately, God, no, I'd be hung out to dry for this one. But like part of what we do is sales, okay? And so like if we can't sell the thing, people can't see the thing. The tree is just falling in the woods on its own. And so that kind of entrepreneurial thing is about generating new audiences, generating new sales, finding new ways to platform the stuff. I always think about, this show, The Apprentice. I always think about like, do you know the show I'm talking about? Yeah. And I always think, imagine, because there are always like these kind of gambins that they put on this thing, but like imagine now I'm going to pitch this. If somebody steals this idea, they're welcome to it. Just cut me a royalty. Put the business people on one team and the artists on another team and give them the exact same business challenges. And I guarantee you the artists will win. Because there's something about survival and having to get into that kind of creative space and creative solutions to real life problems. And I think that's part of what the entrepreneurial spirit is. And Jenny and I are just grafters, we hustle, and we've kind of created this space for ourselves, and have weathered, a recession and heading into a second one. And it's about kind of diversifying. It's about, survival, and it's about the hustle. And for us, the hard work that we're not afraid of, and the obsession of making the thing work, making great art, selling that to an audience.
Brilliant. The hustle.
And the attention to detail as well. Like over the years, as Philly said, we one of the company phrases that Niall Sweeney came up with for our business cards was bleeding theatre. And for a long time, we literally worked day and night just to get those projects over the line to the degree, to the standard that we wanted to see them realized. So yeah, it's about being obsessive. All of them.
Probably all of them, bar maybe Selfawareness. No, I think all of those shine, certainly, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
I think the comfortable with ambiguity one is really, I've been thinking about that a lot, you know, during the lockdown, you know, and in a way, particularly, you know, arts professionals who have gone through the previous recession are quite well equipped for this, you know, because we're very, very used to planning for 3 or 4 very different near futures being, you know, past 6 months onwards all the time. You know, there's always projects that may or may not happen, that may see you in New York for half a year, or may see you doing a residency somewhere else, or, you know, so I think that, you know, there's a lot of resilience.
God, that doesn't give me any feeling. I'll be straight up. I don't get a yes feeling or a no feeling from that.
You're numb.
We're called so many things along the way, and often you're shaping these terms to, you know, to try and explain to your aunt what you do, or to put on an application, or to, you know, tell the bank, you know, or to tell Sherry Fitzgerald when you're begging for the apartment exactly what you do. So, you know, arts professional and theatre maker and company director, playwright rarely goes down well. You know, that's a niche one. But arts professional, I suppose for us it's true. You know, it's kind of, there are a few terms that kind of are so ambiguous that they could be a lot of things. But perhaps there's some terminology, and maybe it's arts professional, that is helpful in shaping the conversation around how the country feels about arts and culture, and how the government funds the same. And so the idea of putting professional in there feels good. I'm getting a yes feeling now as I'm talking it out.
Live on air.
Live on air. But yeah, so I'm kind of, you know, I'm not really precious about, I've been called a lot of things in my life, and so arts professional is kind of is grand. Jenny, did you have any strong feelings?
Feels a little dry to me for what we do, in a way. Like, arts professional is like kind of one aspect what we do. If I was to choose a term, I would say that we're theatre makers, you know, or festival makers in the festival context, you know, which feels like it encompasses everything from the making to the actual delivering. But I don't have a strong feeling.
If you dig deep enough on our website, you'll find pop culture renegades.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, just to say from the very get-go, I think we were determined that the communication of the work was going to be an extension of the work. And so for the very first show that we did together, really kind of set the goalposts in terms of how important, you know, communicating really in a really fun and a really effective and really dynamic and groundbreaking way, which was, the show was called Danny and Chantel Still Here, which was Philip's first play. And actually for that show, we were the very first theatre company in Ireland, we think. I mean, no one has challenged us on this claim. We're the very first theatre company in Ireland to use social media. So it was MySpace, actually, that we used. And we created this silly little video that went viral. MySpace, sorry, and YouTube. MySpace and YouTube. And so, you know, and really, like, pushed by Philly a lot at the time, is that we're always pushing ourselves to, you know, do better in that regard, and, you know, break down perceived notions of what is the done thing. Sometimes the done thing is very much the thing to do. But I would say that marketing is a very big strength of the companies. and it's very weak in the arts sector overall. So it looks like we're doing a really extraordinary job, but really we're just doing all the right things. And the skills which were never extraordinary to begin with have been completely wiped out in the past decade. There's absolutely no marketing training and communications training at all in this country beyond third level. And third level is very, very basic. And you really, you learn an awful lot about effective communication and smart sales when your own neck is on the line. There's really no better experience than that. So yeah, communication is absolutely essential to us, and box office is essential to us. People look at the company and really think that we're a commercial success, and we're not a commercial success. We take big risks because we have a very, very high box office target. There's some theatre companies in Ireland that when they do their budgets put in 0 for box office. They don't consider it at all. But a big part of our business model is box office, and that's not just about the cash coming in. It's also about playing to a full house and creating that energy for the show.
No, the only thing that I would add to that is just that we're kind of it goes back to the kind of dissolving the walls between spaces. It's just about kind of meeting people where they are, and often we were very quick to ditch kind of paper posters and flyers and stuff like that, even though now and again we've gone back to them because but in a very different way. But I think like 10 years ago in Dublin City Centre, these kind of DL letterbox style flyers were kind of everywhere, and that was a marketing campaign for shows, but they, of course, the internet has kind of offered a lot of initially kind of very free and kind of great resources, and you can have your audience giving you feedback at the for better or worse at the interval now, via hashtags. And so we were kind of very keen, certainly at the start, and we've kind of followed through on it, just kind of to roll with all of those new changes and to really kind of get excited by those changes, I suppose.
Can I pick up on that and actually tag back to the phrase arts professional? Because I think as a sector, and I'm really speaking for theatre here specifically, no, really the arts actually, is that we're very, very poor at communicating what we do and our value to, the wider population. And that's because we like to talk about in terms of ourselves, whereas actually really good communication, which you learn very quickly from marketing, is, like Philly said, to meet people where you're at. So you don't say the same thing to your granny to come to the show as you say to your best mate. And there's something that tags back to arts professional about that I don't know, maybe it's right, maybe it's not right at all.
Mm.
I feel like you should have given us this question in an email beforehand.
Well, you're lucky there's 2 of you, so you get 6.
So I know 1. So
right.
I think that empathy has been really, really important. And I don't just mean empathy in terms of, understanding where somebody is coming from emotionally. I mean literally being able to put yourself, I think I have the ability to put yourself in someone's shoes, particularly experientially. And so that means, and I think it's something that Philly is really outstanding at as well. So that means that, if you're doing your own festival experience or your own theatre experience or telling a story, that you are really constantly checking in with the audience point of view. And, from the minute that they engage with the work, whether it's seeing a poster, walking through the door, at what point in the story or the festival or so on, which tags back to the attention to detail as well. So I feel like that's been a really important driver in everything that I do. Philly.
Thank you for giving me that thinking time. I think we're probably going to, like, Jenny and I kind of, we're kind of, after, 12 years of working together, we've kind of got that kind of twin brain going on. So we're probably going to say pretty much the same things. But I think that leadership is something that, I can say Jenny has developed, and I certainly have, is that about kind of being able to really gather a team, to lead a team, to not be afraid of difficult conversations, to get projects over the line, to push them further than we thought we could have pushed them in the first place, and to kind of understand people's limits. And I think that's, when you're working in theatre, very often in theatre, things can get very tense for the kind of seemingly ridiculous reasons. And generally it's because people have not been listened to, or people have been pushed in the wrong direction or too hard and stuff like that. And I think over the years, we've both developed the skill to manage those situations and preempt them. And it kind of comes down to something Jenny said earlier. It's just about kind of being fairer to people, really, and collaboration, and knowing that you can lead and not always have to be in charge as well. And so that's going to be my number one.
So I've thought of another one, which is I think these are good to say. I think like flexibility of thought or flexibility of perspective is quite an important one. I think that we have always been able to look at what, the prevailing paradigm is, whether that's within the sector itself or whether it's within certain noise that's happening on social media, and go, oh, hold on a minute, is that right? That doesn't feel right to me. That's and investigate that. And likewise, in the same way, I think Philly and I are both able to kind of state a position or an idea and be challenged on that and kind of go, oh yeah, that's a much better idea. And I think that that's really important. That's an important muscle to keep flexed, because it's easy to settle into a much more rigid way of thinking, and I see it in the sector all of the time. So I think that's important, actually.
And kind of on a more practical sense, is that I will say we, because there was just we've gone on this journey together, really, but in very practical terms, learning how to galvanize audiences and market shows, which was no kind of mean feat, and there was no template, and there was no leadership, really. When you're dealing with new audiences, you have to create brand new, ways of talking about work. And so that's something that we've become very adaptable over the years, and and new audiences, we find new ways of speaking to them, and we're and I guess in a very practical sense, the marketing, branding and selling of shows, it's been quite satisfying to kind of really hone that skill and to kind of arrive at this point and kind of go, yeah, like we do that stuff, really easily at this point.
Because I think we have had to get very good at delegating. So this is just a very practical one, that kind of attention to detail that we've talking about. There's nothing like me and Philly on a project from A to Z, but that's just not practical with so many projects, with us wanting to free our minds and our energy up to always think more creatively or bigger picture, or focus on our own particular task. So by definition, you have to get very, very good at delegating and at trust within that. And a lot, you know, I used to work over weekends. I used to work all evenings. Weekends went a couple of years ago. Evenings are gone now. You know, I need a lot more time to do a lot fewer things in a lot better ways. In saying that, you know, things are so instinctual now. You do things, you know, relatively quickly, maybe to somebody with less experience. But yeah, time and nourishment from living, work-life balance, family, outdoors, whatever, all of these things have become equally as important and as satisfying as work.
Yeah.
They're all part of work as well.
And I think for so many years, especially when you're a bit younger, you know, we were so obsessed with like learning, discovering, succeeding, and we would try, you know, our hand at so many things, and we would say yes to so many things because maybe this would be the thing, and maybe this is the thing. And then I think at the, you know, you arrive at a point 10 or 12 years later, we just know a lot more, and you kind of go, well, no, I know that that's going to be a gigantic waste of my time, and I know that this is going to be really nourishing. And so so our kind of, given how much we have done, we're trying to do less and do it better all the time. And also, you know, we ain't no spring chickens anymore, and, you know, family time becomes much more important, and, you know, reading time becomes much more important. All of those things that you kind of, you know, pushed aside for a long time.
Well,
sorry.
We formed an advisory committee a number of years ago. After Riot was a massive shift for the company. Our audience exploded, our international profile exploded. We really caught this moment that meant that the company took on staff for the first time, took on a salaried, albeit part-time general manager for the first time, massive step for the company, had an office for the first time, and had a kind of expanded team for the first time. And actually that was the transition that I found most challenging, because we moved from being very carefree, kind of anything goes, no idea was too ridiculous, you know, there wasn't that much weight on anything, everything was really fun. And then suddenly we were established, you know, and there was this whole generation who were and are looking up to us and listening to every bit of nonsense that comes out of your mouth, and, you know, having employees and a lot of project staff who are really, you know, looking up to you as leaders. So we put together an advisory team of really great people that really helped us to manage that transition. And that's probably the most formal thing that we've ever done. It wasn't a board. We're remaining kind of board free for the moment. Philly and I are the only directors of the company. But it was somewhere that sat in between a board and a creative nourishment team.
I kind of do. I feel like that we have, like, I'm not sure I would use a term like does society allow, you know, because I think that we've fought for the space that we take up in the arts world and in the theatre world or whatever. but things can be very tough, and you've got to advocate for better conditions, certainly for younger people that are coming into the industry, and how the industry is treated at government level and acknowledged by society, etc. But also, we do live in a great country that is freer than most, and that we do have kind of access to supports in a way that they don't in other places. And so I kind of I personally feel like it's a good place to make art, and I think that the conditions can often be good, and certainly the conditions that we create within This Is Pop Baby for other artists are excellent. I kind of feel like when I reflect on it, I kind of think like, yeah, that was actually, we've made some really good things, and often Dublin City and Ireland has been really receptive to those things. Certainly think of Alice in Funderland, or Work nightclubs, Riot. People have taken our work to heart in the way that we might never have expected, and that feels to me, and somebody who's been kind of concerned with ideas around home, that feels like home to me, and so that feels really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add to that, as someone who's spent a few years living in Australia and also working quite a bit in Singapore in the past decade. And Ireland is just an idea. It's just a place that celebrates ideas on a human to human level. So it's really comparatively easy and joyous to get something off the ground. Like, people are kind of up for it, if you have approaching Fiach, at 3 a.m. in the morning and asking for the keys to the Peacock, but also just, on an everyday level. I think that actually ideas are really free-flowing currency here in Ireland, and that's not the case in other places. Like, for example, in Singapore, people are very, very, very guarded about their intellectual property because it is actually stolen. Government bodies will listen to an idea pitch and then they'll go and do it themselves, which just isn't a problem yet that we encounter here. So it's a really kind of rich, not in monetary terms, but it's a really rich and fun and engaging place to make things happen, which is why there's such a disconnect, really, in terms of people actually getting behind fighting to invest that. And I'm not quite sure what that disconnect is, but certainly on the ground, everybody is kind of up for it.
God, I don't have an answer to that, except that it's kind of a tangent, but there are so many barriers to third level education for so many parts of society, and so perhaps it starts at the kind of how you diversify who goes into the places in the first place. And so I think that you are traditionally, and perhaps it's changing, but in kind of, you're seeing, white middle class people come through arts training. And so therefore that's the kind of actor pool that is put in front of you, and that is the writer pool and all of that. And so I guess I would be most interested in how we break down the barriers to third level education for people, and how you kind of diversify at the source there.
Brilliant. Jennifer?
And I would say probably further integration between industry and third level is so helpful. There's an MA course in UCD that has an internship as part of its course. I'm sure there's lots of courses that have that, but it's during the academic year, and I think more of that is really valuable for everybody.
I tend to say, I think something that worked really well for us is about like finding your voice or finding who you are and bringing that into the industry. So it's about point of view. It's having like a really strong point of view. It's like, I'm not so interested in you coming out of college and putting on the David Mamet play, you know, as a profit share. I want to hear, like, personally as an audience and somebody who is looking for new work, I want to hear, like, who are you? What have you got to say? What is it like to be you in this place at this time? And if you can reflect that authentically and poetically and dramatically on a stage, then people are going to want to see it. And I think it's something that did work for us, and it's something that I think that we kind of continue to do in our work.
Brilliant. Jennifer?
I was pretty much going to say the same thing in a slightly different way. But I suppose when looking around for your point of view, like, what is your point of view? It's in the life that you lead. You know, it's there in front of you. It's the thing that you're passionate about in your life is the basis for your point of view. And I just don't think you can go wrong if you follow that thread.
Yeah, and then also attention to detail and taste level. but that comes down to everything. That's like when you're designing your first flyer, attention to detail and taste level, you know, so yeah.
This has been the Zimmering Sessions, and this has been Jennifer and Philly from This Is Pop Baby. If people want to find out more information about your work, what's your website, what's your handles?
Website is www.thisispopbaby.com, and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram under This Is Pop Baby.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us today on the show.